Okay guys, I want to actually do a little bit more of section 10.4 in this video. As I said previously, part of 10.4 is about adding radicals and the rules you have to follow when adding radicals. But part of 10.4 also has some more multiplication. Okay, so these examples include a combination of multiplication and sometimes addition. So remember, when you're multiplying with radicals, you have to have the same type of radical. Not necessarily the same thing underneath, but just the same type of radical. So here's my first example. Well, hopefully you can see that we're going to use the distributive property. And I'm going to distribute the square root of 5 into those parentheses. Well, this is a 5 underneath a radical, and this is a whole number 6. So remember that there is an imaginary 1 in front of any radical. So this is going to be 6 times 1 because they're both whole numbers. So this is going to give me 6 radical 5 minus square root of 5 times the square root of 5. Some of you may know that that's just 5 because that's a common shortcut. But if we follow the multiplication rule, I know 5 times 5 is 25. So it's the square root of 25, but we know that that is 5. Okay, so this answer would be 6 radical 5 minus 5. Okay, and that would be your final answer. Notice I can't actually subtract or combine these because this doesn't even have a radical portion. So that's how I know I'm done. I want to also point out that you can write this in either order. So this is the same thing as negative 5 plus 6 radical 5, correct? So both of these would be considered valid answers. Sometimes you see this bottom answer identified as standard form, but in any way, they're both acceptable, okay? All right, so I want to try 2 more examples. This was just regular distribution, okay, but sometimes we have a more advanced kind of distribution. Some of you may remember this from earlier lessons. This is a quantity squared. So I can't just distribute the 2 in here because now I have addition and subtraction involved. You know, when there's addition and subtraction involved, sometimes we have to do things differently. This actually means to multiply whatever's in the parentheses by itself, or write it twice. And then we have a binomial times a binomial, which is FOIL. Some of you may remember us talking about FOIL, first, outside, inside, last. So that means it's going to be this quantity, square root of 5 times the square root of 5, which we just learned in the previous example. We know that's just going to be 5. Outside, so that's radical 5 times negative radical 2, so it's going to be a negative square root of 10. I'm allowed to multiply those because they're the same type of radical. Then we do the inside, which will give me another negative radical 10, and the last. So it's negative times negative, which is going to be positive. But again, we've learned the trick. I know that that's just going to be a 2. Because 2 times 2 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So I'm going to write these down for you just so you know that I did think about them. It's just a shortcut. I know that the square root of 25 and the square root of 4 is 2. So the multiplication is done. We followed the multiplication rules, but now we have addition and subtraction, and we have like terms. So the multiplication is done. Now we have like terms. This is the same kind of radical and the same thing underneath the radical. And we know that there are imaginary ones here. So I know that I can combine those. And then definitely we know we can do 5 plus 2. So 5 plus 2 is 7. A negative 1 and another negative 1 would be negative 2 radical 10. Remember, when we're adding radicals or subtracting radicals, we only worry about adding and subtracting the coefficient in front. Whatever's under the radical will stay the same. So this is why this comes at the end of section 10.4, because you've got to multiply first and then you have to switch gears and add and subtract. Okay, we're going to do one more example like this before we finish this video. This one's going to be a little bit longer. So 2 radical 7 plus 3 radical 5, or square root of 5, I know I say that a lot, times the square root of 7 minus 2 square root of 5. So this is definitely another FOIL example. So we're going to have to distribute first times first, and then the outside, and then we're going to have to do the inner and the outer. The inner and the last. Okay, so first times first, outside times outside, inside, inside, last, last. So multiplying first, right? Multiplying first. So 2 square root of 7 times square root of 7. I'm going to write this one out. This is going to be 2 square root of 49. And we know the square root of 49 is 7, right? So we'll come back to that, but I know that that's going to be 2 times 7. Okay? Outside. 2 times 2 is 4. It's a negative. Positive times a negative, so negative 4. 7 times 5, square root of 35. Because when you multiply, you just need the same radical. Same type of radical. And you can multiply what's underneath. Inner. So that's going to be plus 3 square root of 35. And then last. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 square root 25. Well, I know that that's going to be the same as negative 6 times 5, right? So our multiplication part is over. No more multiplying to do other than, the negative 6 times 5 and the 2 times 7. This is addition and subtraction, for sure. Okay, so these have like terms because this is both, they're the same type of root and the same thing underneath. So I can add those coefficients. So this is going to give me a negative 1 radical 35 when I put those together. This was 14. This is negative 30. So I know I can add these 14 and negative 30 That's going to give me a negative 16 minus 1 radical 35. You don't have to write the 1. You can leave it out if you want. It's the same thing. Both of these are fine, whichever one you prefer. Okay, so make sure, that you switch gears. You start off multiplying, distributing, and following those rules. But once you're done distributing, you've got to switch gears and follow addition and subtraction rules. Okay? All right, well, I'll be back with section 10.5 soon.